Jennifer Ma is the Managing Director of Chapman Capital Partners.
You got to take those risks, but if I didn't achieve that, I don't think I would have been tapped on the shoulder to come and be Managing Director.
She has over 20 years' experience as an accountant.
Emotional support to financial analysis.
Working with ASX-listed companies.
Don't underestimate yourself.
Large privately owned businesses.
You've got to play the long game.
Governments and SME businesses as well.
Having come from a very structured and environment of KPMG to a very much fluid environment of a startup, how do I take advantage of that?
So she's got a great base to start the startup business that she's working in now.
As an executive, it's extremely challenging because you're used to being able to implement and taking what your idea is and following through on it.
She's the managing director and she also is on 3 different boards.
As you manage teams, that's what you're trying to do.
Which just adds to the amazing expertise she has.
I love to boogie.
Oh! I'm really looking forward to talking to her on the show today.
Hi, I'm Jenny Ma. I'm the Managing Director of Chapman Capital Partners, and I'm looking forward to being on the podcast for Accountants on Purpose.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bartholomews from YouLegal. The Accountants on Purpose podcast showcases inspiring accountants who are leaders in their field.
And then it just came to me like a bolt of blue.
What makes them tick?
Love it.
How did they get to where they are?
I want to inspire.
And what do they do now for their teams, their clients, and the world? What was the last song you heard today, Jenny?
The last song I heard was in my head.
Oh!
And it was Murder on the Dance Floor, and it will actually tie into one of your other questions.
Really? Sophie Ellis-Bextor?
I know, I'll leave it at that.
That was a pretty big 90s hit.
It wasn't big 90s hit. It wasn't probably one of my most favourite songs, but it's annoying enough that it gets stuck in your head occasionally.
It does. Yep. Very repetitive. So are you a morning person then?
I'm probably not naturally a morning person. But I've learnt to be a morning person. So I've got 2 children, 6 and 8, and they train, and they're both terrible sleepers.
Oh, no.
So you learn to be a morning person.
You've been learning for 8 years.
8 years, exactly.
I reckon I'd like to be more of a morning person.
Yeah. Why?
It's hard in winter though.
Yeah.
I think you can get a lot done in the morning.
You can actually. Actually, I do lie. I've been changing my work routine a little bit. I used to be working, a fair bit at night, but more recently I've been working in the morning. So it's a 5 o'clock wake up.
No.
I know. It's a bit scary. And then I can knock out an hour and a half rather than that.
Which is probably more quality than doing it at the end of the day.
Yeah, because I was really struggling at that sort of, I'm going to start scaring your audience now. Yeah. Working at 10 o'clock, that 10 to 11.
Well, then you probably
rather than
trouble getting to sleep after that too.
So you're doing the 5 to 6:30 and it's good.
And then the kids wake up.
And the kids wake up.
What's something most people don't know about you other than the fact you wake up at 5 a.m?
Well, this is what is tied to the first question, is that I love to boogie.
Oh.
And I do a bit of crazy dancing on the dance floor.
How often do you get on a dance floor?
Thankfully, not too often.
Thankfully.
Because I would make a fool of myself.
So there's something called No Lights, No Lycra. Have you heard of it?
No. Is it you're dancing in the dark? Is that what you're doing? Yeah.
It's an exercise class.
Ah, right.
And you just go along and there's no lights on, so it's completely in the dark. So you can dance like a crazy dancer.
Yeah.
And no one can see you.
Oh, right.
It could be right up your alley. Yeah. You do it at home.
I do it with my kids now.
With the kids, yeah. To 90s classics. Tell me about your journey of getting to where you are today as a managing director.
It's a long road. It's a long road. I won't start from where I was born, but I think my childhood has a big impact as to why I've taken the journey that I have. So my family were sort of first generation from Vietnam who were refugees into this country.
Mm-hmm.
And, mum and dad always were, extremely hardworking.
Mm-hmm.
So they had that 7-day-a-week work ethic. I virtually never saw them.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also the oldest of 3 children. So you've got parents who are largely absent,
Mm-hmm.
and me being the responsible child. So I think there's a lot of me as a managing director and as a team member that is tied to that responsibility,
Definitely.
and that commitment to whether as a child to the family and now to the team.
Mm-hmm.
So and that team, whether it be in a KPMG context,
Mm-hmm.
is the firm, and in the Chapman Capital Partners context is very much a team now.
Mm.
I think that's the common thread.
Such an interesting story. So who then, maybe this will tie back to that question too, has played a pivotal role in your life and why?
There's lots of people.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick just one.
Yeah, it's hard to pick just one. Career-wise, I think the most pivotal is my husband.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've been with my husband for 20 years.
Yes.
And you can imagine.
That's basically since the start of your careers.
Exactly. Right?
Did you meet at uni?
At the tail end of uni.
Yes.
So basically the semester before we broke for graduation.
Wow.
And I started at KPMG.
Mm-hmm.
And, with him, it was, if you think about your career as a woman in particular, and you're taking those moments in where you need to push a little bit harder than you might not otherwise push.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of the time out of work or in and out of work with children,
Mm-hmm.
what that requires to be able to do that effectively, you need that support at home. Like it's, you need a team around you that's helping you. And for me, the biggest player in that team is my husband. So he helps, me get things done.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that, he emotionally supports me. So it's that getting the thought out of your head that you can't do it to changing the voice saying you can do it. And that's Richard. So Richard is very much, of course you can do it. Stop listening to that inner voice. That's the doubter, and listen to me and the people around you who believe in you, and you can do it. So that's the pushing of the journey. And if I think about,
So he's a cheerleader.
Yeah, he's the cheerleader,
But also while having big kind of goals himself, he's not
that's right.
just cheerleading on the sidelines.
No, that's right. And I think we're both supportive of each other in that way as well. So, and Richard's, he's extremely successful in what he does, and he's an inspiration to me. And we've got very different skill sets and different strengths and weaknesses. But when you think of leaders, you can be different.
Definitely.
And and
complement each other.
Yeah, but it works in he works in a professional firm. He's a leader of that firm, and he's got different strengths and weaknesses. But that works, and I've got different qualities, and it works in my environment as well. So it kind of talks about that diversity in leadership is okay, and we don't need to have that one stereotype of what a leader must look like.
Definitely.
Anyway.
Yeah, and I guess another way to think about it is you've got two CEO heads that hit the pillow every night, and you can bounce ideas off each other and get a different perspective on how they might do things.
Yes. Yeah.
And how you might do things. So
or a validation that you're doing the right thing.
The right thing, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, which a lot of people in both of your situations wouldn't have.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You're very blessed like that, I think. So you're a member of 3 different boards. And so those different hats you wear, I suppose, must have different challenges. What do you find your approach is in those situations on boards, as opposed to being the managing director where you've kind of got the final say?
Yeah, it's really challenging actually. And that saying around board directors that your nose is in, but your hands are out. I've just finished the
company director's course.
And that was very much the tone. And it was a really great reminder to reflect on how do you influence without actually doing. And as an executive, it's extremely challenging because you're used to being able to implement and taking what your idea is and following through on it. But here you can't.
Yep.
You can't.
Such a different skill set.
Massively different
and
skill
also
set.
being able to ask questions that are probing in a way that doesn't disempower the team that do need to do the execution.
Yeah.
That's challenging as well.
And KPMG has probably been a good training for me in that regard because as you manage teams, that's what you're trying to do, right? So you're trying to give the feedback, trying to understand what the underlying issue is without necessarily going in and fixing it and understanding that, the people that you're working with are capable and competent and they can implement it themselves. So it's a really it is hard to do. I am getting slowly better at it, and it comes with practice. But I really enjoy it. I can't. It's not going to be a full-time role by any stretch, but I'm on 3 boards. One's a very large not-for-profit with national footprint, so it's got 700 odd staff across the country.
Wow!
So very different type of issues to my very small private company that I'm on, where I actually am much more active, and the support that they require is very, very different to what the support
the not-for-profit
requires, and it's kind of ironic that it's people think of not-for-profits as the ones where you need to actually get in a little bit more. It's the reverse for me here, but both extremely enjoyable and learning different skill sets.
And also a great give back as well for you to be able to use your skills in a way that help others.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've often said I'd be just terrible working at a soup kitchen serving soup.
Yeah.
Because I'd just spill it and it would be a mess and I'm not good at cooking. But if I can give back in a way that I use my skills and I'm able to make a difference, then I think that's a much better use of my time and everyone else's.
And so, from the not-for-profit, it's around that sustainability of the business and the organisation, and making sure we're holding true to what our values are, which is rewarding. And on the private company side, it's around helping much more on the individual level. It ranges from emotional support to financial analysis, through to strategy, through to, just that, mentoring and moral support for the business owners and the leaders.
So earlier we had coffee and I described you as an accidental entrepreneur because you're now, after working for 20 years in a very traditional accounting firm and services firm, I suppose, KPMG, you're now learning about brand DNA and how to have a website created and those sorts of things. Yeah. So tell us about what you're doing with Chapman Capital Partners.
Yeah. So I'm at that very formative phase of the development. It is my own little startup. We're 4 months in. So at the moment, it's been building the infrastructure. So building the website, building the people, building the IT, all this stuff that you take for granted in a big organisation.
Absolutely.
Premises, physical premises. We're still working out a solution on that. So all of that stuff is great to learn. And one of the directors on the small private company, which is very big on scale, she gave me some really good advice around how to, start where you want to finish. So that means that I'm really, whilst part of me just wants to get things done. I just want to get that infrastructure in place so we can move on and we can start implementing. But it has forced me to slow some of those decisions down and think about what do we want to stand, how do we want to look as a business moving forward at scale, and how are we ensuring that we're implementing the right systems and processes now to do that. So it's things like agile. We want to be agile, so that means we want to try and enforce a discipline of paperless. So making sure that we've got the systems that allow us to do that.
Working out what those systems are and what's going to be best for how you're going to work. It's so hard to know.
Yeah. So I'm in that kind of build phase. So I'm building the foundation at the moment. Beyond that, though, I think it is around thinking around the brand DNA that you're talking about. Who do we want to be? What do we want to stand for? And how does that flow into the services that we offer? And at the moment, whilst we've got areas that I think we already identify, there's a whole lot of scope for us to still evolve and change. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the creativity that will allow us to, and it's not the traditional sense of creativity. I'm not, doing a beautiful piece of art, but it's still creative side of your brain that you're not probably that used to using. Yeah, that's right. And trying to unlearn things as well in that creativity. So there's that process of, having come from a very structured and environment of KPMG to a very much fluid environment of a startup. How do I take advantage of that?
I'm so excited for you. Thank you. Just keep thinking of things to share with you.
Yeah. We'll talk about it later.
We will. What's your favourite quote?
This one was a really hard one. I saw this question. I was like, oh my God, this is really hard. Because quotes don't always
grab
resonate.
you.
Yeah. But if I think about things that I say to myself, in points of time where you kind of get maybe a little bit overwhelmed and I know that over the past couple of years, one of the things that I say to myself is, you know what you know. And that sounds really simple and I got to explain it. And that's in context of sometimes when you are about to present or you're about to be in an environment such as this, it's about going, actually, you've got 40 years of history behind you now, right? And that comes from all your learnings as a child, through your work life, through your family. All of that is in you, and you bring that to whatever that is every day. And whether it's a podcast or it's a meeting with a new client, you have to remember that there's all these experience that you bring to the table, and never forget that. So at moments where you kind of feel maybe you're inadequate, or you feel like that what's that expression where you're feeling like you're being a fraud, that you actually you got this. You got this. Yeah. And you got a lot of all these stories in you, right? That will come to the forefront in that moment.
And you saying that just reminded me of Oprah when she goes on stage. She feels like she's standing on the shoulders of all the people who've come before her. Yeah. And it's a bit like that. It's like you know what you know, but you also know everything that they knew.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
So you're so much more prepared than you even think you are. Love it. Do you see yourself making a difference in the world through what you do on a daily basis?
I'm not going to be as grand as to say, am I making a difference to the world? But we are trying to contribute. And that might look like, yes, it's, maybe it's boards, but more broadly, if I think of Chapman Capital Partners and I think of the people around the board, the director group, I know there is a group of people that really want to see the success of the state. and that means supporting our local businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that, you and I was talking about earlier was the fact that, part of our landscape at the moment is the number of early stage businesses,
Mm-hmm.
where it's really sometimes from a pure business financial perspective, it's really hard to provide advice and support if you're only taking that lens.
Mm.
But for us, we do want to play in that space.
Mm-hmm.
We do want to support these companies. We do want to see them grow and flourish in this state. We want to see, the state becoming the smart state that we can be.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do that through, yes, connecting capital. So we'll help and support businesses such as that raise money,
Mm-hmm.
but we also want to connect them into our relationships, into our experience, and see if we can actually help grow them and help sponsor them grow, whether it's nationally or internationally.
Yeah, cool. That's that legacy piece, I suppose, that you are working on every day, but maybe without even thinking about what it's going to leave.
Mm.
So if you knew back then what you know now, what would you do differently?
Life is finite, and if I think of the person that's coming up in their career, me at the age of 21 and moving through, there's a couple of things. One is don't underestimate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, you've got to play the long game.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is there's moments that you have to be patient,
Mm.
and you actually have to work hard at your craft and do what is being asked of you and do it well. So sometimes I can see young people coming up and they want to do go into the tangent of X, but they haven't mastered and their why yet. So they need to do that and do it really well, knowing that will be the foundation and the building block.
Without just jumping from
exactly
X to Y to Z.
Having said that, you have to take the risks. Right? You have to, find those opportunities to really challenge yourself and learn new experiences. And for me, whilst I stayed at KPMG for 20 years, I moved divisions, I moved state, came back. The promotion to partner was a real challenge, to internally decide that you want it and take the risk of actually
putting yourself
forward to do it, and so you got to take those risks. But if I didn't achieve that, I don't think I would have been tapped on the shoulder to come and be managing director of Chapman Capital either. So they're the learnings, and then on top of that, I would say take more holidays.
Oh yes. Well, it's always good to have something to look forward to. So is that the advice you would have to young accountants in a competitive industry?
Yeah.
Take more holidays?
Yeah, make sure you allow that time.
Break
right?
time.
Yeah.
And can't just work all the time.
Exactly. And whether the holiday takes you to different types of experiences or whether it's just downtime, some quiet thinking time.
I often find that that's the quiet thinking time where I get my creative bursts or ideas that I don't just have when I'm doing the doing every day.
Exactly. So just taking that time out.
Is there anything that I should have asked you that I haven't asked you?
That's a pretty comprehensive list of questions.
That's a good list. Thank you so much for coming in today.
No, my pleasure.
If you're an accountant on purpose, feel free to find our Facebook page and join our community.